I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. All right, today on the podcast we have Cheryl McKenna. Cheryl is the daughter of a serial entrepreneur who watched her parents struggle, not all days, but certainly some of the days, as business owners to generate and retain profit. Being a business owner is not for the faint of heart. That's very true. Cheryl was able to combine her family history and her career in merchant services to give business owners a better chance of success by helping them retain more of the revenue they generate. As the director of new business at Merchant Advocate, she and her team will evaluate your merchant services program to find revenue links. Welcome.
Thank you. That was a mouthful that I gave you.
Yeah, it's all right. It always is. And I don't read well out loud. I'm getting a little better, but usually there's like, especially when I usually talk to like veterinarians and stuff, like there's like all these, like all these things and specialties and acronyms, and I'm always just like, I don't know what any of this means. I can't keep up with my own industry's acronyms.
Right.
Right. So Cheryl, what was your first job?
My first job that I got paid for was my father owned a sub shop. It was called Harvey's Heroes in Austin, Texas, on the Drag. And the Drag is,
I love it.
It's like the area by the university, right? Where the students go. And so my first paid job was to pick up the chairs, put them on the table, and then vacuum the floor. And then when I was done vacuuming, take the chairs off and put them back on the floor, make sure they were all nice and neat and arranged. And my pay was quarters to play the Pac-Man video game machine, which kind of shows my age. It was one of the first, I think it was the first, like the original Pac-Man. So that was in 1979, 1980 maybe.
Yeah,
that was my first paid job.
I love it.
And growing up in the family business, I feel like you just learn to work at an early age.
Yeah, I think that's true. I keep trying to get my kids to shred stuff.
My son shreds. Yes.
Shred, please. I keep being like, it's worth $100. That whole thing is worth $100 to me. Whoever wants it. And they're like, it's so much work. And I'm like, it is so much work, but I didn't tell you I had to shred it by hand. You just have to figure out how to get it shredded.
Yeah, $100. I might come and do your shredding for $100.
You're welcome to.
Yeah.
So give us the cliff notes on your career journey.
Well, okay. So I graduated from CU Boulder with a degree that you cannot use in the real world if you want to make any money. And my degree is international affairs with an emphasis on Latin America. And then I double minored in economics and women's studies. So, okay. Mine is
not Spanish?
Like English lit. I know Spanish pretty well. I really do. That was, I suppose that's like the one skill. And also when I went to university, I feel like they still taught critical thinking. Mm-hmm. That's good. But I needed a job. And my best friend, she graduated a year ahead of me. So she was already out in the real world working. And the company she worked for was hiring. So I said, well, what do they do? She said, merchant services. And I said, what is that? I had no idea. And I have been in the merchant services industry ever since. Now, the thing about merchant services and why I am so passionate about Merchant Advocate and what we do in Merchant Advocate is that it's an unregulated industry and the ethics, not of everyone, but I would say the majority of the players in the game have questionable ethics. There's a lot of money to be made in the industry, and it's very competitive. So consequently, I feel like they have to get kind of sneaky with how they charge, right? So about, I think 9 years ago now, I was working for this group. I'm not going to say the name for sure, but I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like my father owned businesses. I know how hard it was to generate revenue. In the first place, right, you have to generate revenue. In the second place, you have to keep enough to have an actual profit. Like, okay, in your world, right, that's the whole P&L deal. You need more P, then you have L. So I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I was going to quit my job. I was going to go to graduate school. I didn't know what I was going to, I was going to get some sort of degree, hopefully not like continue down the international affairs, emphasis Latin America things. I'm not quite sure what you could do with that to actually have a real job. But I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to abandon this that I've been doing for 14, 15 years. And then lo and behold, the CEO of Merchant Advocate, my phone rings and I pick it up and it's the CEO of Merchant Advocate because he has just signed this client for expense reduction that I happen to be supporting at that point in time. And somehow he got my direct line and we started talking and I said, wait, what company did you say that you're with again? He's like, well, I'm the CEO. I'm like, yeah, what company? And he said, Merchant Advocate. And I said, I emailed you like 5-6 months ago. And I let you know that I wanted to work for you and all this experience that I had in the industry. And nobody even emailed me back. And he was like, do you want a job? I'm like, I do.
I love that. There you are.
That's how I ended up.
Where I am. I love it. I love it. I feel like people, I always, obviously we talk to business owners all the time. We're looking at our expenses, we're trying to understand, what's an important expense, what's not, and all of that. I always tell people though, like, I am not your CPA who's like going through your P&L with a comb and making sure that every little thing that's in your P&L, like, is an expense that's important to you, because I'm just not that person. I'm like, go make more money. And I don't like, and I'm also like not anti-debt. Like, it all has a purpose and it all has a reason, and we need to generally like spend money to make money. Debt, but I know
there is good debt.
Yeah, there's good debt, right? And so
sorry, Dave Ramsey, there is good debt.
We don't apologize to Dave Ramsey over here because we don't care what he thinks.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
I'm not even gonna get me started. But I think people don't understand what they're paying for with merchant services. And so I kind of want to start there because you've been there, you understand like what people are paying for and why it's an important thing to pay for, but also to make sure that you're getting the proper services out of that, right? So there's a lot of things that business owners pay for. They're not really sure why they pay for it. And I think that's always a good conversation to have. And because you're an expert and you've been in on the back end of all of it, and also now help people reduce their rates. Why do people pay for merchant services? Why is it important to have those fee structures, and what should they be getting with those fee structures?
Well, first of all, credit card payments are just the way of the world right now. So, I mean, I do carry around cash. I mainly carry it around in case my child needs some cash, or like if I'm traveling for tips, or maybe if I go to a garage sale. But otherwise, I don't carry enough cash in my wallet I certainly don't carry enough cash. I mean, I just went to the vet the other day. It was $59. I'm not paying for that in cash. I paid it with my debit card. Pretty much everything that we pay for is via credit card. And then think of all the online commerce that is transacting every day. That's all credit card based. So you have to accept credit card payments in order to actually probably have enough customers to keep your business afloat. I don't think you could even run a cash business. Do you?
I don't think so. And I'm always of the make it as easy as possible for people to pay you.
Yeah.
Like if you're somebody posted, I'm in all these accounting forums, right? And this guy was like, yeah, so one of my clients has a $30,000 coaching offer and she doesn't want to pay like the credit card fees on it. So how do we get people to pay her? I was like, you're offering a $30,000 coaching offer, but you won't let people like use her credit card?
I just that alone would make me question how much value I'm really going to receive.
I'm like, I hope she's not doing business coaching.
Right. I know.
Right. I went to sign up for a business coaching situation that was extremely expensive. I went to put it on a credit card and they wanted to charge me a credit card fee, a processing fee. And I was like, and I'm out.
Yeah. So that really puts a bad taste in people's mouths. And that's the new thing. That's like the new thing. There's so many new things all the time. Like I said, merchant services is very, it's very competitive. So they're always trying to come up with ways to, have something new and exciting. Because the other thing is business owners get inundated with people calling, with people stopping by the practice or the clinic or the hospital or whatever, and trying to get them to switch. So the new thing is we can cut your bill for merchant services down to $0 or like $100 or whatever. And what I always tell, because I work with primarily dentists and veterinarians. And so what I tell my clients is that's going to put a bad taste in people's mouths. You're not a food truck. Like there are certain instances where I feel like you can pass on the credit card fee, but I would never do that if I was a veterinarian.
Not only that, it's illegal in many states.
Yeah, exactly.
Including Colorado. I've had business owners try to charge me a fee here in Colorado and be like, that's illegal.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
So you have to word it all these ridiculous ways, and you have to, it can't be a fee for a credit card. It has to be a cash discount. You have to have the right signage. You have to have the right thing. Anyways, just don't do it. I think what we should do is we should take that idea, pretend that idea is a piece of paper, and we're just going to go.
We're just going to light it on fire for those listening.
There's a trash bin back there, and I made it, by the way.
Yeah, always. Over your shoulder. It was an older over the shoulder one.
But I heard the swish. So anyways, that's what we're going to do with that idea.
We're not doing that. Because it makes you seem cheap and that you don't know how to run your business. Anytime anybody tries to charge me a credit card fee, I'm like, do you not know how to run a business? Do you not know how to price your services? How can I help you with that?
How pricing your services, and also let's make sure that every item is the most efficient that it can be, right, on your financials. So what I would tell people to do that listen to this podcast is just go and find a merchant statement. Okay. Now it either gets mailed to you or there's a portal. Your processor has a portal. So pull out the most recent statement. Your July statement is definitely available because it's the end of August. And just look at the acronyms. And then try and figure out if you understand what those are. So there's about 800. I mean, I have one right here. It's pages and pages long and has things like EIRF space D, CMP space PP, LVL2 space B2.
Right. So there's a whole list of services that they're charging you for, right? And that make up that rate generally, right? Like whatever your rate is. So what are those services like? What are they providing for those services though? So like
they're providing the ability for you to accept any kind of credit card, right? So that one that I read that was EIRF is a hand keyed credit card with no zip code. The LVL2 B2 is a level 2 business card. So every single one of those will tell someone who knows how to read the statement exactly what type of credit card the business is taking, how they accepted it. Is it chipped? Is it swiped? Is it keyed? And how it's qualifying, like what cost category does it fall under? And every single one of those cost categories is published. So someone who can decode a statement can actually figure out, is your processor overcharging you? Is there a team member doing something that they shouldn't be doing when they're entering in a transaction? Is your software to run your practice, your clinic, your hospital, your whatever, if it's integrated with your merchant service provider, are the two communicating correctly?
Yeah.
So there's so many areas where you can go through and make that the most efficient financially as you possibly can by just knowing how to drive those rates down. Does that make sense?
It does. But why is it important to use a merchant service and not like just Venmo or PayPal friends and family?
Oh, well,
That's like, I think that's what I'm trying to get at is like, why is this an important fee to be paying? Like, why is having a service provider an important piece of like running your business?
So I can give you an example of something that actually just happened about 25 minutes before I got on this podcast with you.
Right.
So I think of like PayPal, Venmo. They're for if you want to sell something on like Facebook Marketplace, or they're not business quality.
Or send a friend, half of your dinner.
Like my neighbors and I do this all the time. I'm running to Costco. Do you need anything? Yes. Right. Will you pick me up a jar of collagen? Right. It's $30.
Or it's always the room parent, although they finally figure this out, but they're like, leave a check at the front desk. I'm like, do you have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App? I don't care what it is. There's not going to be a check.
Yes. There's no paper check.
That's the purpose of those type of payment platforms.
Or like when I stop by the farm stand, and I get corn for everybody. And it's like, oh, it's $4. Like, whatever. We just.
Right. But if you send money via Venmo or you receive money via Venmo, you don't have any protections on did that money go to the right place? What if it needs to be refunded?
Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, the IRS is not going to look kindly on. So processors are required to. Now, okay, this is a good question for you because they always get it confused. So they have to provide a W-9.
It's a 10. No, so the processor sent a 1099-K with all the merchant services or all the revenue that went through the merchant services for the year.
Yeah.
It was 20. It was like the threshold was 20 grand or a certain number of transactions. But many of them are just doing everything now. And I think there's a new law that there's been 6 different sets of legislation in the last year. I think in one of those sets, they put that threshold much lower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obviously, you should be claiming all your income.
Get that out of Venmo or anything that's really accurate, right?
Yeah. I mean, we can get reporting out of Venmo, but like paying through or receiving your dollars through Venmo doesn't ever like what if somebody does a chargeback or needs their money back, or like who's behind you if that happens, right?
Well, yeah. So interestingly enough, you mentioned chargeback. So that's one of the things growing up in, my career, I grew up in the merchant services industry, but one of the departments I was in for a while is chargebacks. So I'm actually starting to consult with this company specifically because they have chargeback issues. And I'm like one of the only people who can even ask them questions such as, well, what are your chargeback reason codes? Because we need to look it up and figure out what your representment options are. Anyways, so merchant services is complicated, but what I wanted to touch on, which just happened 25 minutes before this, is I have a company that's doing some marketing work for me. And the first time I paid her via PayPal, and this time she finished a project and she said, oh my gosh, I was having a nightmare with PayPal. So people were paying her by PayPal, but then for her to get the money, there was a problem because you have to ask for it to be transferred, right? It just sits in this, I don't know, like holding area until you request it to be transferred to your bank account. Well, that little button, widget, whatever, broke. And so the money was just like piling up, but she couldn't get to it.
Right.
And guess what? Guess who she was able to talk to fix that situation?
Right.
Yes. No one.
No one, right? Because there's nobody on that side, right? No. Was she using
don't even know.
Was she using business?
No idea what the rate is doing.
Was she using business PayPal or was she using friends and family PayPal?
I don't know.
Yeah. So I always tell people like trying to go around the fees is going to put you in a bad situation at some point.
Yeah.
Either with not counting the money correctly, getting charged back, or somebody coming after you with no recourse.
Owned by Visa?
Visa, yeah, I think so. Yeah,
So-
they are now. Cash App is too.
Yeah.
Oh no, Cash App is owned by Square. I just found that out the other day.
Yeah.
I have friends that work at Visa, like literally like right here. It's really right like there.
It really is. It's very close to us.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of merchant services. Like First Data has a huge center right by us.
Oh, and my stuff about me used to work at First Data. I applied for jobs at First Data. So
You need a real merchant services, like
Yes.
you need a real house. Like you don't
An accountant.
want to live in a cardboard box. Like that's
Mhm.
not what we aspire to, right? We need wood and you need a business class way to accept revenue.
Right, and then you have a team of,
revenue.
and then you have services behind you if something happens to those
Absolutely.
processes and things like that. Like it costs money to move money, right? So it's an important service that you need, but also it's okay to be a part, like to make that as efficient as possible, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're going to charge 30 grand for a coaching program, you probably want people to pay in a way that they can't just take their money back without any recourse.
Yeah, and they're going to want to, and the people who are paying $30,000, I guarantee you they want it on their rewards card. Or if they're a business coach, they need to pay for it on their corporate card.
Right? Like, but see, like I'm always just like, I don't care how I pay for it. Right? It's not on me. Right? And if anybody tries to tell me like how to pay for something, I'm just like, no. I'm adult. I will decide how many points I want or which card makes the most sense or which card has the ability to handle that, right? Yeah. And I think, if you're a dentist or you're a veterinarian and you really, how often do people come into your hospital and really it's not really a planned expense and they might not have it in their bank account. Well, they get to choose, right? They get to choose if they're going to put it on a credit card or, in our case, we put everything on a credit card and just pay it off every month.
That's exactly
I think a lot of people do that now. I never have cash. I am so far behind on paying my kids their allowances that we actually got a green light situation because we never have cash.
Yeah.
Like they now have their own little debit cards because we never have cash to give them.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I've actually looked into Greenlight because I feel like it would be a very good lesson.
My daughter,
who's 13, because sometimes I feel like they just think, oh, well, it's just this piece of plastic that you hand over and you get to buy whatever you want. No.
My daughter got her card the next day. I had her grandmother take her to Target and she overcharged on the card. And I was like, this is so fun. We're like, you're learning things.
Valuable life lesson. But yeah, I think you brought up a really good point, especially, with veterinarians. There are plenty of times when there's an emergency situation. And if you didn't give the option to pay by credit card, think how terrible that could be for the family. So
well, and that's just it. They might tell you no then, and then the animal doesn't get its care. Like, do you ever want to be in that situation? Like, I'm always the person that's just like, however you want to pay me, I don't care. Although don't send me a check because I never go to the post office. Like ACH, please. I don't want your checks sitting in the mail and people stealing your card, your numbers, and no, thank you. So hold on, we totally went down a rabbit hole. I told you it was going to happen.
I feel like we're good at the rabbit hole thing.
I know. I knew we would be. So it's important. So we've established that it's important. We've established that letting people pay the way they want to pay is super important, especially to running a business. Like, don't dictate how your people pay you. Like, if you can't cover the fees, you need to raise your prices. You need to figure out how to charge better. That's a price problem, not a merchant fee problem. So what is an optimal rate, or, how do you negotiate with your credit card processor And how is merchant advocate able to get, to do that when people, when a lot of the time if we call, they're like, no, thank you.
Well, I think what it is it's just knowledge, right? So anyone can do a better job the more knowledge they have with something, as long as they apply that knowledge, right? Because you can have knowledge, but then you have to apply the knowledge, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I sound like a mom here, but we know what every single one of those weirdo acronyms means on the statement. So we can go, and we know what all the published costs are. So we can go through and see exactly which ones are being charged, like which categories are being charged too much. And we can see where maybe the team is doing something, or a certain member of the team is doing something that's causing the practice to overpay for different card types. But it's just really about, I'm sorry, I love looking at merchant services statements. It's like so exciting for me.
Look, I love looking at tax returns. It's okay. We can all be nerds about things that other people find like extremely boring. Because otherwise, like if there weren't people like you and me in this world, or if we were all like people like you and me,
but we're still fun though, Jamie.
We're still fun, but it's like we would just talk about tax returns all day long. Like that's not fun for really. That wouldn't be fun for me in the long term.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, an optimal rate. So the lowest rate that I've ever gotten someone to, and I say but it's not me because we have negotiators at Merchant Advocate that handle that. They really, I mean, talk about knowing those 800 acronyms by heart and exactly what it means. Like that's what they do. They're really good at that. But the lowest effective rate, so all in, right? You've got to take your percentage, your transaction fee, your NABU fee, your monthly fee, or all those fees,
all the things.
Smush them all together, and then divide that total by the total volume that went through that month to get what I call the effective rate. And the best I've ever gotten someone to is 1.51. So that's awesome. But then there was someone that I was working with the other day, and it was really good for what they were doing, their average ticket, their industry type, their volume. They got to 2.65. They got them to 2.65. So every business is a unique puzzle. And what I love is when people come with their box of puzzle pieces and they just go, and they all fall out on the table, and then I just start looking at them, and I'm like, okay.
You and I are a lot alike. I'm like, give me your tax puzzles, give me your goals, and we'll see what we can do. See if we can create a different picture.
There's more than one way to arrange them a lot of times, which is interesting too, right? So that unlike a puzzle where it's like, that's the only way it's going to fit together. There's one way. There's more than one way. So optimal rate. If you're paying over 2.5% as a veterinarian, it's probably too much, but not always.
Yeah. I think when you and I talked, I was like, this is interesting. And I went and I did mine, and it was like a little less than 3%. And we're like, that's good. Close enough. Good enough. I don't have any control over ours because it goes through another system. So it's like, I would have to talk to the people, and it's like, probably not even worth it.
You never know though.
Yeah, I think
I can look at that statement.
Maybe. I don't even know if I can get a statement.
$0 to look.
I have to figure it out because it goes through our proposal system, and a proposal system handles all of our recurring services.
Yeah. So it probably is like all lumped together.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I'm sure I could like go in and figure out how to pull a statement. But it's just, for me, a lot of the time, it's like, what's the convenience of not dealing with it at all, because all the recurring happens and I don't have to run anything. That's always more valuable to me than whatever the rate is. Like if I don't even have to touch it ever or worry about it.
Yeah,
worth it to me.
Billing is awesome. So I just, I was introduced to a large equine practice, and their merchant services, so they have multiple locations. Obviously, then people come in, or not so much with equine. Sorry, they go there.
Yeah, they go there.
Anywho, But then they also, so that part of their merchant services was totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But they have about 800 clients every single month that they bill, but not the same amount every month. And they used to have this really nifty upload where they were not uploading credit card numbers. No way. The credit card numbers were already like stuck in the secure vault with the processor, but they would upload these unique customer IDs on a spreadsheet and then the amount that customer needed to be charged every month. And then the system would just poof, it would charge everybody and would send an email. Well, their processor took that away about a year ago.
Oh.
And I was introduced to them to look at their statements and just, okay, the puzzle. So their statements, like their rate is really good for all the regular, clinic business, but they didn't have an option for these. It's so 800 that they're doing every month.
Oh my God.
So poor Emily,
hours and hours of work.
Yes. So poor Emily has stuck with this task, right? So that was something I did. I mean, I've been in merchant services for a really long time, so I know a lot of people, and I found them a company that they can do that with.
Awesome.
So
what is the point of recurring and having the thing if like you have to go in and do it manually?
There is no point.
And like that, like I said, like it goes through a proposal system. It sits up the recurring. I don't even literally have to think about it.
Yeah, nor should you.
And it sends reminders if the credit card's about to expire or something's wrong. It sends it to the client. Like before, we have to tell the client that their card is expired and try to get another form. And then also, I've got all these credit cards stored in our files, which does not. I'm all about security. You and I had this conversation earlier. You're like, I can't send you an attachment. I'm like, I know, for a reason. But then I'm just like, is the least amount of crap here that like is sensitive information, the better. We already deal in sensitive information. I don't need people's credit card stuff on file. Like that's not necessary anymore. Nor do I want it. No, absolutely not. Nope. So that's awesome. So I think, so we're looking for an optimal rate. We don't know what that really looks like, but it's kind of in that 2 to 3 rate, 2 to 3% maybe.
Yeah.
What is the easiest? And I think you touched on this, but what is the easiest way to just kind of figure out your rate? So what I did is I just took my total fees for 1 month and divided it by my revenue just to see.
That's it.
And then and then you can say, what? Kind of outside of that realm we were just talking about, maybe we could do better. And a lot of the time with our veterinary and our dental, it's kind of tied into their CRM. It's tied into their customer relationship management or their point of sale system. So Merchant Advocate really works to get them the best rate in their current system, right?
Yeah, no switching.
Yeah. Like you're like, yeah.
So that saying, only fix what's broken?
Right.
That's what we do. We only fix what's broken. So it could be just the rate. It could be a data entry issue. It could be a communication issue. But everything else we leave alone. And generally, the only way to save money was to switch processors. That's what I love about Merchant Advocate. Honestly, it's a much easier project for everyone involved, including me, if you don't have to switch processors.
Right. And then you don't have to change processors. You don't have to deal with your point of sale system not working. And
new thing. And inevitably, a processor transition always comes with some hiccup or something that somebody didn't think about. So like, random things like, well, my terminals always used to batch together. And so it made reconciliation so easy. But then I switched and we have 7 terminals and every single one of them batches separately.
And now I have to do the math and make sure it all ties to my sales every night. Oh my God.
When I run my end of day, it's a nightmare. So
that like hurts my heart because I used to work in a restaurant and my job is to like always like reconcile at the end of the day because I'm the accountant. I always have been the accountant before I was the accountant. Give Jamie the number stuff.
Go figure.
Like that, or I worked in restaurants, right? You're a server. Your job is to do your math at the end of the night, right?
Yeah.
And I would do other people's math, like they would just like pile them up and I would do everybody's math. But you have to.
Fun for you.
It is. It's fun for me to always be like, Jamie, it doesn't tie, and I'm like, Jimmy, I'll find it.
I'll do it.
This is before I even knew I liked counting and math and making. I always say like we put beans in piles. Like I've always loved the balancing of the beans, like making sure all the beans balance is kind of my jam. But yeah, creating like more headache for people in the back end, because you're right. Like anytime we change a system, anytime we change a process, there's going to be things you didn't think about. I always use ours. Like we moved our phones to Zoom before we had the option to text because we had a Google Voice line, but we moved our phone lines to Zoom. Zoom doesn't have a text option. I didn't even think about that. Now people can't text us and I'm like, do I care? I don't care, actually. I think we're good. Email us anyway.
I bet some people cared.
We only had like 1 or 2 clients that like insist on like that. That's really good. Like prefer to text us. They got over it. So I love that it's just like, what is the easiest and like, what are the things that are contributing to this rate? First of all, is there something we're doing potentially? Is there something the way we're taking things? Like it could be a blend of things that really create like that savings for them. And I know Merchant Services, you guys also, Merchant Advocate, you guys look at this, you're monitoring this ongoing as well.
Oh, yeah,
so
absolutely.
You guys have a process in which like you're monitoring this month over month to, if there's any mistakes or whatever you guys are saying.
You have to.
You guys are doing work for them.
I was talking to someone yesterday and we were looking at her July statement. And right there on the July, so there was an increase in July. So we caught that, which was great. But so I was showing her, I said, look at the statement message right here, like right at the bottom of this July statement, right? The statement message that like nobody reads because nobody has time. But it said right there, hey, there were some changes to your rate. Didn't say what they were, but there were some changes to your rate. So unless we hear from you in the next 30 days, we're going to just assume that you accept those changes and you're still locked into your contract. Okay, but you didn't tell me what those changes were. Then the next paragraph said, please make sure to thoroughly monitor your statement each month because you have 90 days to notify us of any errors, blah, blah, blah. It just goes on and comma, and then the next thing, comma. And if you don't notify us within 90 days, then too bad, so sad, basically. Obviously, it was a much more professional statement.
No, that's fine. It's like your SOL. So
we have to look at this every month because we need to catch rate increases like that. And we have a little more time on like errors or whatever, but it's still not that much time.
Yeah. So if you work with Merchant Advocate, you have the ability to, have you guys monitoring things, watching things, understanding, what's going to happen. You got the negotiating nerds going through code by code for you.
Yes, the negotiating nerds. Exactly.
I love it. All right. What is the easiest way to find you or to connect with you?
The easiest way is probably either email, which is C for Cheryl, and then my last name, McKenna, McKenna at merchantadvocate.com. Or you can just text me or call me at 720-526-5318. And I do not use Zoom phone, so you can text me.
I always am like baffled that people give out their phone number, but hey, whatever works for you.
You can also email me an attachment of your merchant statement. Email
send it to me.
Don't worry, because there's nothing. There's nothing on a merchant statement really that anybody can do anything with.
Right.
There is one company out there who does post the bank account number, but it doesn't have the routing number or the bank name.
Maybe you just don't. Maybe black out your bank account number just and just.
Yeah. I mean, put a little post-it on over it or something. It's fine.
Yeah, you're fine. So last question for you. What is the one thing a business owner should do today to better understand what they're paying in merchant fees?
Well, they should definitely calculate their effective rate.
Yeah. Calculate your effective rate.
For sure. And I would say if it's anything over 2.5, because remember, again, my record's 1.5. So depending on your volume, and I don't know if you might not even be anywhere close to eligible for a 1.5. There's maybe it's just impossible because of the card types that you accept, et cetera, but
all those Amex Blacks.
I know. But if it's over 2.5, then I would send a statement. It doesn't cost you anything for us to take a look. So there's no harm.
We had a client and their merchant services were like so big one month, like, because we just kind of eyeball them, like we just kind of keep an eye on things for our clients as we do their books. We're like, what the hell happened? Like, and we asked them, like, oh yeah, there was a surgery and it was like an Amazon Black or an Amex Black or something. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that. Like, it was like this massive fee to process it. And I was like, but we would think it would be smaller.
Yeah, I was talking to a doctor the other day, and I said, what happened between May and June? Like 1 month was 47,000 and 1 month was 111,000. And he is in Texas, in the city of Texas, and there's a lot of oil and gas, and there's just a lot of, I don't know. I feel like it's more than oil and gas, because he says to me that sometimes people come in and pay for really big cases with just like wads of cash. I'm like, okay. So sometimes they pay with wads of cash and sometimes they pay with credit card. But anyway, okay.
Your normal Jane Doe and John Doe, though, are going to be trying to pay with their reward card.
I want to be like one of those people who looks under mattresses in that area. Like, normally, I would not want that job.
Have you watched Good Girls? Have you seen that show? It's buried in the back. It's buried in the back in Minnesota, guys, or Michigan, wherever they are, up north, and they're like burying money in the backyard. And I'm like, isn't it the tundra up there?
Yeah. It's not very liquid. It's not a liquidity situation. Just saying.
Cheryl, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.